What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're talking about The Hitcher, directed by Robert Harmon, starring C. Thomas Howell and Rutger Hauer. Let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. Overall, I like The Hitcher. I thought this was a very good, solid horror thriller road trip movie. I thought director Robert Harmon did a very good job behind the camera of this film. He does a really good job at creating atmosphere, at creating suspense, and he knows when and when not to show the violence that this movie has. Now, this movie came out in 1986. And upon its release, a lot of people criticized it for being very overly violent. But when you watch this movie, you don't really see anything except for maybe basic gunfights other than that. But most of the really extreme gory kills, you see basically, you only see is the aftermath of the carnage. The most famous scene in this movie is when a character is tied to two big rig trucks, and then John Ryder pops a clutch and she gets ripped in half. You don't see her physically get ripped in half. You hear the sound effect of it, and you see the close-up of her hands tightening and then releasing. It's actually really well done and very brilliant. But what this movie does that works is subliminal messaging. It makes your mind think you saw what you saw. I call that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre effect, the original one by Tobe Hooper, where for the longest time, everyone says, yeah, Leatherface, he chops a guy with a chainsaw and it goes crazy. But when you watch the original Chainsaw movie, you never see Leatherface penetrate someone with a chainsaw. Maybe Franklin, but you never see the raw violence of it. You see just little snippets of it. And that's how Robert Harmon did this movie, and he did it perfectly, expertly. Really well done in terms of his direction. And very good cinematography as well. Like, this movie has a lot of really good camera shots and cinematography. There's this one cool shot where the character Jim Hosley is walking down this like little trail of big rigs, and he's silhouetted with a spotlight in the back of him, and he's kept mostly in shadow. It's a really cool shot. I like it a lot. Yeah. So, in terms of direction and production, this movie is actually really well done, very well made. In terms of the casting, C. Thomas Howell and Rutger Hauer, they crush their roles. C. Thomas Howell as Jim Housley. He comes across a very likable dude who is just driving his car down the highway. Then he picks up this random guy named John Ryder. At first, everything seems okay, and then it slowly starts to get weird and intense when Ryder pretty much says he wants to kill Jim. And then Ryder tells a story about how he's killed multiple people. And now the chase is on. And throughout the chase of Ryder pursuing Jim, Jim sees a bunch of other families that Ryder has destroyed as he goes down the highway. And I like how we don't really get much of a backstory for John Ryder. His backstory is kept mostly just secretive, and it's really just the performance of Rutger Hauer that gives this character life. Rutger Hauer as John Ryder is perfect. He's got that right amount of intensity. He's got that right amount of creepiness to him. He's got that right amount of just pure, just skin crawling. That's the best way to describe Howard's performance. It's skin crawling. And his endless pursuit of Jim Housley is just what holds this movie together. Like, at the end of the day, The Hitcher does not have this grand plot, nor does it have any of these hidden messages. I think that's just people reading too much into it. This is just a basic movie of a crazy man chasing down this kid down the highway, and it's done in an effective way, and it's backed by two very good performances. C. Thomas Howell, who does everything he can to make the character of Jim as likable as possible because we want to see him survive, and Rutger Hauer, who is a very talented character actor, does everything possible to make John Ryder as mysterious and detestable as humanly possible. And the amount of violence that Ryder has done just makes him even more just intense. So yeah, it's backed by two great performances. And then you have Jennifer Jason Leigh, who plays the character of Nash, who gets introduced, and her and surprisingly enough, Lee and Howell have very good on-screen chemistry. And I like how this movie doesn't go down the romance path with these two. Like, it teases it, but it never goes down that route. I actually appreciate that because it doesn't take away from the overall story, which is Ryder pursuing Jim. I think adding a love story would have convoluted it way too much. Now, is this movie overall perfect? No, it does have some issues. Like I think the movie does have some. Like the first 20 minutes of this movie is awesome, and then the middle tends to drag in certain areas and certain places, and then you get to but it makes up for it once you get to the third act. But you also have some characters that get introduced that don't really do much. Like you think that the character of the police captain Estrin is going to work more with Jim, but he just disappears once Jim pulls the gun out on him and says, "Get out of here." And then that's pretty much it. Then you don't see him again. But yeah, as an overall package, I think The Hitcher is actually really good, which is why I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. I think this movie has earned its cult status over the years. Rutger Hauer as John Ryder is one of the most underrated villains in horror because he's just so damn good and so damn entertaining. He's just so damn good and just so damn creepy and intense. And C. Thomas Howell as Jim Housley does a very solid job. So yeah, don't really have much else to say. 7 out of 10 for The Hitcher. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.